All right, last time you guys watched a video to get this design review done for Whack-A-Mole with a start, a reset, a score label, and then your little mole that bounces around on the screen. We've got sound one and mole timer so far. Make sure that you have named your clock mole timer or you're going to struggle to follow along with my code. Because, you know, when things aren't named the same, it struggles. So over in blocks, we're going to start off with a new block called a procedure. Procedures are set up kind of like a recipe. So when you want to do something over and over again multiple times, and you don't want to give the steps over and over again, you use a procedure. So this would be kind of like if I told you, walk in the room, pull out your chair, sit down in the chair, scoot your chair in, wait. Or if I could just say, take attendance. You know, when I say that we have to take attendance, you need to be in your seat, scooted in, ready to go. But I don't have to tell you every time to do every one of those steps. So we're going to create a procedure. So this is to procedure do. It's underneath the purple procedures. We're going to pull that one out, and we're going to name that procedure move mole. We're going to write all this code one time, telling the app when we want that mole to move around the screen. And then we can just call the procedure every time we want that to happen. So every time we want the mole to move, we need it to move to a random spot on the screen to make the game more fun. So I'm going to go down to my mole, and I'm going to set my mole X. So we're scrolling down a while. Set mole X. Here it is. Set mole X. It's dark green. And we need to write some code that tells it to be random. This is going to be a little bit of a complicated math block, so feel free to pause it as many times as you can. We're going to go up to math. The first math block I'm going to grab is a multiplication. So we haven't used this one yet. We're going to do multiply. For this, we want our numerator to be a random fraction. So in our math, there is one called random fraction. There it is. That's going to go in our first block. Now for our second number, we actually need it to stay within the screen. To stay within the screen, we have to set it to our canvas width minus our mole width. Otherwise, our mole could end up halfway off of our edges, and we don't want that to happen. So we need another math block. We're going to do a minus this time. In the first minus math block, we're going to go to canvas, and we're going to say canvas width. It's going to be light green. There it is, canvas width. That's going to go in the first one. Now the second one is going to be the width of the mole so that our mole doesn't end up off the screen. So go to mole, and we're looking for a light green mole width right here. That goes in the second minus part of the math block. So this math says a random fraction times the canvas minus the mole. That's our mole X. For the Y, we kind of need it to be the same thing, but so we're just going to duplicate this whole line of code. We're going to set this to a Y. And instead of the canvas width and the mole width, this is going to be the canvas height and the mole height. So now move mole means take the mole's X to a random fraction, not wider than the screen. Set the mole Y to a random fraction, not higher than the canvas screen. All right? So that's your first block of code that you need. This won't actually do anything on your app yet because while we have defined the procedure, we've said what it is, we haven't actually told it to run that procedure at all yet. All right? We're going to do one more procedure, and that's going to be how to score a point. So first, to score a point, we have to initialize that variable. We're going to name it score, and we're going to start with 0 points. Now, new procedure, another one of those recipes. This one's going to be called score. And to score a point, we're going to do that set the score label to get the score. So find our score label, set score text to get the label. And get the variable. Remember, you can't get global score here unless you've initialized it up here first, so make sure to do that. Now we're going to design our clock. So on our mole timer down here, we're going to say when mole timer dot timer, which is just the same as when clock 1 dot timer was before. And we want that every time that timer fires, we want our mole to move. We already wrote the recipe for that, so now, under our procedures, we can just tell it to move the mole. And we don't have to write any of this code again. Every time that timer fires, it's just going to move the mole around the screen. So now we're good to go on that. Next step. We need to tell it what to do when the mole is touched. So like if we catch our whack-a-mole. So we're going to go to mole and we're going to say when mole touched. Not touch down, not touch up, just if we touch it. Okay, so there's our mole touch. When we touch that mole, we need to set our score. So we're going to go up to our variables and we're going to say set our score. And we're going to say our math block to get score +1. And then got an internal score happening. Not an external score yet, but we do have an internal score happening. Now on our last recipe, we said that the procedure of score is what makes our external score show up. So right here, we could say that when mole is touched, here's how many points we get, and now we can just call that recipe to up our external score on this one. We also want it that if we touched that mole, we don't want it to stay in the same spot anymore. So we're going to go grab that recipe and tell it to move the mole if we've got a point. Okay, so you can see we've already saved ourselves from rewriting this recipe code twice because we put it in the mole timer and we put it in the mole touch. Okay, so that's our mole touched code. All right, at this point, your MoleMash game should work. Not a lot of code, but makes for a pretty fun game. So make sure that your code is correct. Get your tablet, test it out. Be sure that your mole can move everywhere on your screen and that your score goes up every time you touch the mole. The last thing you need to do for the MoleMash game, I want you to set a timer, just like we have for the other games, so that you can have, like, say, 15 seconds to play the game for as long as you want. And then I think we're going to add some tiny databases to this next class so that you can see like a high scoreboard kind of thing. So make sure this one's ready to go. Add a clock. Okay. I'm going to do like 2 steps of that. On my designer, I need to add another clock. This is my game clock. In my blocks, we already have our clock code in our backpacks. Hopefully you put your clock code in your backpack. So I'm looking for mine because I have a lot of clock code in my backpack. There it is. Remember that until we write that variable, that's going to show up as red. So I'm going to initialize mine. And that error will keep popping up until I finish the code. And then I don't have a timer label yet, so get your timer label done and be ready to go next class.